I didn't think much of the rules when I first saw them. That was probably my first mistake. I thought they were a joke, or some kind of hazing thing they did to new overnight employees. I had worked enough bad jobs by then to know every workplace had its own weird little customs. Warehouses had them. Motels had them. The call center I lasted 3 weeks at had them. People got bored at work, especially at night, and bored people invented things. That was what I told myself. I still tell myself that sometimes, when I'm trying to sleep during the day and the room is too quiet. The gas station was called Hollow Rock Fuel and Market, though nobody around there ever used the full name. Earl, the manager, just called it Hollow Rock. It sat off a two-lane highway in eastern Nevada, not far from the edge of a national park, though not far meant something different out there. The park entrance was almost 40 miles away by road. The nearest town was 27 miles west, and it was barely a town. One bar, one clinic, one post office, a small grocery store that closed at 6, and a trailer park behind a line of cottonwoods. Hollow Rock was farther east than that, past a dry lake bed and a lot of empty land. If you drove too fast, you could miss it. That was strange, because it had the biggest sign for miles. A tall metal sign with red block letters that buzzed at night. Gas. Diesel. Food. Rooms. The word rooms had been painted over some time before I got there, but you could still read it when the sun hit the sign the right way. Across the highway, there were 6 old motel cabins in a row, all boarded up, with a dead ice machine sitting between cabin 3 and cabin 4. Behind the station, there was a gravel lot, a propane cage, 2 dumpsters, and a low hill of black volcanic rock. The building itself was part gas station, part market, part diner. Only the gas station and market were open when I took the job. The diner side had been closed for years, but they never removed the counter or the booths. You could still see them through a wide square pass-through window behind the register. Red vinyl stools. Chrome napkin holders. A dusty pie case. A menu board with prices that looked impossible now. Coffee, 75 cents. Cheeseburger, $3. Pancakes all day. The first time I saw it, I remember thinking it looked less abandoned than paused. Like somebody had stepped out and expected to come back in 5 minutes. My friend Shane got me the job. He wasn't a close friend. We had worked together at a delivery warehouse outside Reno before I blew out my knee and he quit after an argument with a supervisor. We texted once in a while. Mostly dumb stuff. Job leads. Used tires. Photos of broken pallet jacks. That kind of thing. When he messaged me about Hollow Rock, I had been out of steady work for almost 2 months. The warehouse had let me go after my injury turned into reduced availability. That was their phrase, not mine. My rent was late. My truck needed a transmission. I was 29 years old, sleeping on a borrowed couch, and trying to convince myself I was between things instead of stuck. Shane said the job paid cash for the first month, then regular payroll if I stayed. 12-hour shifts. 3 nights on, 4 nights off. More if I wanted them. It came with a room in the back of the station. Not an apartment, exactly. More like an old office with a cot, a shower, a microwave, and a space heater that sounded like it was full of bees. I asked why they were hiring. He said, "Because nobody wants to work nights that far out." That made sense. A lot of bad decisions do at first. I drove out on a Thursday afternoon in late November. The desert had that washed-out winter look, all gray brush and hard dirt. Snow sat on the mountains in the distance, but down where the highway ran, everything was dry and cold. The sky looked too big. That's the only way I can describe it. There was nothing to soften the edges of things out there. No trees, no houses, no traffic most of the time. Just road and rock and wind. Earl met me at the station at 4. He was somewhere in his 60s, though he had the kind of face that made age hard to guess. Thin tan, white mustache, baseball cap pulled low. He wore a faded green jacket with a patch from the Park Service on one shoulder. Not a current patch. I asked him about it later, and he said he used to do seasonal maintenance for the park before his knees went bad. He looked me over for about 3 seconds and said, "You sober?" I said yes. "You steal?" "No." "You scare easy?" I laughed because I thought he was joking. He did not laugh back. "I mean it," he said. I told him no, not really. That seemed to satisfy him. The interview lasted 10 minutes. Maybe less. Earl showed me the register, the safe drop, the cigarette cabinet, the lottery machine, the old radio under the counter, and the camera monitor. There were 8 cameras, though only 6 worked. Camera 1 showed the front lot and pumps 1 through 4. Camera 2 showed the side lot and the propane cage. Camera 3 showed the highway facing east. Camera 4 showed the highway facing west. Camera 5 showed the back hallway with the restroom and stockroom doors. Camera 6 showed the diner. Camera 7 was black. Camera 8 showed snow. I noticed that right away. It wasn't static. It was a steady view of falling snow in a dark place, lit by some kind of yellow outdoor light. I could make out the corner of a roof and maybe a wooden railing. It looked like a cabin porch. I pointed at it. "What's that?" Earl leaned over, tapped the side of the monitor, and said, "Old feed." "From where?" "Doesn't matter. Don't use 7 or 8. 7's dead. That's what I mean." He said it in that flat way people use when they're done talking. The night shift was simple, at least on paper. I came on at 8 in the evening and left at 8 in the morning. The station officially stayed open 24 hours, but after midnight almost nobody came through except truckers, park workers, hunters, and the occasional lost tourist who thought the GPS knew better than the road signs. My tasks were basic. Restock drinks. Make coffee. Mop the floor. Check the bathrooms. Log fuel deliveries. Watch the pumps. Keep the till under 200. No cooking. The hot case had been shut down. The only food was packaged stuff, microwave burritos, chips, candy, and sandwiches delivered every other morning by a guy named Victor who never came inside. He left the crates outside the side door, honked twice, and drove away. "People don't like stopping here?" I asked Earl. He looked at me for a long moment. "Some do." That was all he said. The back room where I slept was behind the stockroom. It had cinder-block walls painted beige, one narrow window with bars over it, and a metal desk with old invoices stacked on top. Earl had put a cot along the wall and folded 2 army blankets at the end of it. There was a little shower stall in the corner with a curtain that smelled like bleach, and a toilet behind a half wall. It wasn't nice, but it was free. At that point, free mattered more than nice. Earl gave me 1 day of training. That should have bothered me. It didn't. I had run registers before. I had worked alone before. I knew how to count change and tell drunk people we didn't sell beer after 2. I knew how to smile without meaning it. I knew how to keep my head down. Around 7:30 that first evening, Earl took a folded piece of paper from under the till and handed it to me. "This stays with you on nights," he said. I unfolded it. It was old receipt paper, yellowed at the edges, laminated badly with tape. The handwriting was neat but pressed deep, like whoever wrote it had been angry or scared. At the top it said, "Night rules, read before 9 p.m. Below that were 7 rules. I remember them exactly. I wish I didn't. 1. At the top of every hour, check the receipt printer. If it prints a new rule, follow the new rule until the next hour. Do not follow an old rule after it has changed. 2. Do not sell fuel to a vehicle that appears on camera 3 but not through the front window. Mark the pump out of service and look away from the monitor for 60 seconds. 3. If the diner bell rings, pour 1 cup of black coffee, place it on the pass-through counter, and return to the register. Do not wait to see who takes it. 4. Do not answer the radio if the caller uses your full name. Turn the volume down to 1 until you hear the word clear 3 times. 5. If the restroom light shows blue under the door, lock the hallway gate and do not check the mirror behind the counter. 6. If anyone asks for directions to Silver Bow Campground, say, "That road closed in 1998. Say it once. If they ask again, go to the stockroom and count 60 cans before coming back out. 7. If a rule prints in your own handwriting, do not obey it. I read them twice. Then I looked at Earl. He was watching my face. "What is this?" "Rules." "For what?" "Nights." I smiled a little, because I still thought there was room for this to be a joke. Earl didn't smile back. "Shane told you about them?" "No." "Figures." He reached under the counter and pulled out a cheap digital watch with a cracked black strap. "Wear this during shift. Station clock runs slow. Register clock runs fast. Wall clock is closest." "Closest to what?" "To right." He set the watch on the counter. I picked it up and turned it over. Someone had scratched 3 letters into the back. DML. Who was DML? Earl took the watch from me, looked at the back like he had forgotten the letters were there, then handed it back. "Last guy who wore it." "What happened to him?" "Quit." "You make everybody read these?" "Only overnight." I looked at the rules again. "Do I get an explanation?" "No." "That's not really reassuring." Earl sighed, like I was making this harder than it needed to be. "Most nights, nothing happens. Some nights, something does. If you follow the rules, you'll be fine. And if I don't?" He took his cap off, rubbed a hand over his white hair, and put the cap back on. "Then I have to hire somebody else." That was the first thing he said that actually scared me. Not because it was dramatic. Because it wasn't. He showed me the hourly slips next. At the top of every hour, the register's receipt printer might spit out a short instruction. Not every hour, he said. Not every night. The slips were usually simple. Things like, "Do not open the east door until 11:05. Or, "Count the chairs in the diner. If there are 7, turn off the diner lights." Or, "Ignore knocking from the propane cage." He said the rules weren't always the same. Sometimes they contradicted the laminated sheet. Sometimes they replaced one of the 7 rules for that hour. Sometimes they looked like nonsense. "Follow them exactly," Earl said. "But only if they print from the receipt printer, and only for the hour they print. What if someone messes with the system?" "No one does." "What if the printer jams?" "Don't pull the paper after midnight." "Why?" He stared at me again. I stopped asking why. That first night, Earl stayed until 9. At 8:59, he made me stand behind the counter and watch the receipt printer. The station was quiet except for the cooler's humming. The fluorescent lights had that soft electrical buzz that gets into your head after a while. Outside, the last of the sunset was fading behind the mountains. The highway ran dark in both directions. The wall clock clicked to 9. The receipt printer chattered. A white slip curled out. Earl tore it off and handed it to me. it said. 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Keep the front door unlocked. If a woman in a red coat asks for change, say you only have bills. Earl read it over my shoulder. No red coat, he said. Okay. If she comes in, don't look at her shoes. Why? He gave me the look again. Right. No, why? At 9:05, he put on his jacket and left. I watched his truck pull out of the lot and head west. Then I was alone. For the first hour, nothing happened. That is something people get wrong when they tell stories like this. They make it sound like fear arrives all at once. It didn't for me. At first, it was just work. I wiped the coffee counter. I faced the candy bars. I stocked Marlboro Reds and Camels. I checked the bathrooms. I wrote down the pump totals. I watched one semi pull in, idle for 10 minutes, then leave without buying anything. The driver never came inside. At 10, the printer made me jump. It spat out another slip. 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. If Pump 4 authorizes without payment, press cancel twice. Do not press it a third time. I read it, felt stupid for feeling nervous, and tucked it beside the register. At 10:17, Pump 4 authorized without payment. The register beeped. The pump screen lit up green. Outside, Pump 4 stood empty. I looked through the front window first. Nothing. No car. No person. Just the pump island under the canopy lights, the trash can beside it, the squeegee bucket, and the highway beyond. Then I looked at camera 1. Still nothing. Then camera 3. Camera 3 showed the highway facing east. It also caught a thin angle of the far side of the pump island, because the camera was mounted wrong or the lens was warped. On the monitor, parked at Pump 4, there was a white station wagon. An old one. Wood paneling. Square headlights. The kind of car I hadn't seen on the road in years. It sat there with its driver's door open. I looked up through the window again. Pump 4 was empty. The register beeped. Authorized Pump 4? I told myself it was just a glitch. That was easy to believe, because old equipment glitches. Cameras freeze. Pumps misread. Registers do weird things when they've been patched too many times. I pressed cancel once. The register beeped again. Authorize Pump 4? I pressed cancel a second time. The pump clicked off outside. On camera 3, the station wagon was still there. A shape moved in the driver's seat. I looked away from the monitor and stared at the cigarette cabinet. 60 seconds feels longer when you are trying not to look at something. I counted in my head. At 40, the bell above the front door jingled. I almost turned. The rule for that hour was about Pump 4, not the door. The front door was supposed to be unlocked. Customers could come in. That was normal. But I had not heard tires. I had not heard footsteps. I waited until 60, then looked up. The store was empty. The front door was closed. Camera 3 showed an empty highway. At 10:29, a receipt printed. Not from the hourly rule. A normal receipt. I hadn't sold anything. It curled from the printer slowly, line by line. 1 black coffee. 2 aspirin. Fuel prepaid Pump 4, $20. Total paid. At the bottom, where a card number or cash amount should have been, it said, "Thank you, Caleb. I need to say something here." I had not told Earl my full name. At least, I did not remember telling him. Shane knew it. My paperwork had it. My driver's license was copied in the office. So yes, there were ways for the register system to have my name. There were normal explanations. That is what I lean on. I tore up the receipt and threw it away. Then I took it back out of the trash, because I didn't like the idea of leaving it there. I folded it and put it in my jacket pocket. I didn't call Earl. I didn't mention it to anyone. I finished the hour pretending I was bored. At 11, the printer gave me this. 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. Leave the diner light on. If the bell rings, serve the coffee cold. The diner bell was a small silver service bell sitting on the counter by the pass-through window. Earl had not explained that part well. In old diners, people hit the bell when they wanted service. This one had rust around the base and a crack in the button. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. At 11:12 it rang. Not loud. Just one clean ding. I was standing by the drink cooler with a crate of orange soda in my hands. I froze so completely that one of the bottles slipped and bounced off my shoe. The diner was empty. I could see it from where I stood. Empty stools. Empty booths. The pass-through counter with the pie case and the bell. The bell rang again. Ding. I set the crate down and walked slowly behind the register. I remembered Rule 3 from the laminated sheet. If the diner bell rings, pour 1 cup of black coffee, place it on the pass-through counter, and return to the register. Do not wait to see who takes it. But the hourly slip said serve it cold. So I poured coffee from the old pot into a paper cup and let it sit in the sink under running cold water, turning it slowly like I was cooling a baby bottle. My hands felt clumsy. I kept glancing toward the diner. Nothing moved. The bell rang a third time. Ding. Coming, I said. I don't know why I said it. Habit, maybe? The second the word left my mouth, the station felt different. Not louder. Not darker. Just attentive. Like I had spoken in a room where everyone had been waiting for me to acknowledge them. I carried the coffee to the pass-through and placed it on the counter. Then I walked back to the register without looking at the diner floor, because I had already decided I didn't want to see what might be standing there. I stood with both hands flat on the counter. I heard paper scrape. I heard the cup lift. I heard someone sip. It made a small wet sound. Then the cup was set down again. I waited until my watch said 11:16 before I looked. The cup was gone. In its place was a quarter. It was wet. I left it there until morning. After that, the rest of the night was quiet. Too quiet, maybe, but quiet. A trucker came in at 1:40 for diesel and coffee. He didn't say much. He smelled like cigarette smoke and winter air. At 3 o'clock the printer gave me a rule about not opening the stockroom if I heard someone counting inside. I heard nothing. At 4 o'clock it said to turn all the candy bars backward. I did that, feeling ridiculous. At 5 o'clock it told me not to accept any bills printed before 1971. Nobody came in. At 6:30, dawn started to gray the windows. By then, the strange things from earlier had begun to feel far away. That happens after a sleepless night. Your mind gets weak and practical. The world returns in pieces. Road. Pumps. Coffee. Cold floor. Empty trash. By 8, I almost convinced myself I had exaggerated everything. Then Earl arrived. He came in with a paper cup from home and a bag of breakfast sandwiches from the town grocery. He didn't ask how the night went. He went straight behind the counter, opened the till, counted it, checked the safe drop, and looked at the fuel report. "Pump 4 give you trouble?" he asked. I felt my face go stiff. "A little." "How many cancels?" "2." He nodded. "Good." I took the folded receipt from my pocket and set it on the counter. "This printed." Earl looked at it. His face did not change, but something in his eyes did. He slid the receipt toward himself with 2 fingers and read it. Then he folded it and put it in his shirt pocket. "Don't keep these," he said. "What is this place?" "A gas station." "Earl." He looked tired then. Older than he had the day before. "Go sleep," he said. "First night's always noisy." "Noisy?" "Yeah. That's what you call it." He looked toward the diner. Then back at me. "You followed the rules?" "Yes." "Then go sleep." I should have quit. I know that. Anybody hearing this would say that is where I should have walked out, packed my clothes, and driven back to Reno. Even if I had to sleep in my truck. Even if I had to take some other terrible job. Anything else. But I didn't. Because fear is not always stronger than bills. Because by morning, the desert looked normal. Because Earl handed me $200 cash for the first night, and I had less than $40 in my checking account. Because I told myself I could handle weird. So I slept in the back room until 3 in the afternoon, woke up with a headache, ate a sandwich, and started my second shift at 8. The second night was when the rules began to feel less like warnings and more like a conversation. At 9, the printer said, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Do not say, "I'm alone," out loud. If asked, say Earl is in the back. At 9:23, a woman called the station phone. The landline hardly ever rang. Earl said most people used the number to ask if we had gas during storms or if the road east was open. The phone sat on the wall by the cigarette cabinet, beige plastic, cord stretched out from years of use. I answered with the script Earl had taped beside it. "Hollow Rock Fuel." There was breathing on the line. Not heavy. Not prank call breathing. Just someone close to the receiver. "Hello?" a woman said. "Are you alone there?" Her voice sounded normal. That was the worst part. Not whispery. Not old. Not strange. Just a woman asking a reasonable question. I looked at the slip by the register. "No," I said. "Earl's in the back." The breathing paused. "Can I talk to him?" "He's busy." "With what?" I stared at the wall. "Inventory." The woman made a small sound, like she was amused but trying not to show it. "That's not true, Caleb." I hung up. My hand shook a little when I put the phone back. For the next 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then the phone rang again. I didn't answer. It rang 12 times and stopped. At 10, the printer said, 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Camera 5 is late tonight. Do not trust it until 10:40. Camera 5 showed the hallway to the restroom and stockroom. It was mounted above the hallway gate, aimed down at the 2 doors. The hallway itself was short and ugly, with green tile halfway up the walls and an old mop sink at the end. There was a mirror behind the counter position so the cashier could see that hallway without leaving the register. I hadn't noticed the mirror much until the rules mentioned it. After 10, I tried not to look at camera 5. That sounds easy. It wasn't. When you are told not to check something, that thing becomes the center of the room. I kept feeling like movement was happening there. Not seeing it. Feeling it. A pressure in the corner of my eye. At 10:18, the restroom door opened on camera 5. I was facing the monitor when it happened. The hallway itself, seen in the mirror behind the counter, stayed empty. On the monitor, a man stepped out of the restroom. He was wearing my jacket. Not one like it. Mine. Brown canvas, torn left cuff, black stain near the zipper from where I spilled transmission fluid on it 6 months before. His head was out of frame because of the camera angle. I could see his shoulders, his hands, his boots. He closed the restroom door behind him and walked toward the hallway gate. In the mirror, the hallway was still empty. I stood there with my hands hovering over the counter. The man on camera 5 stopped at the gate. Then he leaned forward. His face came into frame. It was mine. Not perfectly. That would almost have been easier. It was like looking at a bad copy of myself made by someone who had studied photos but didn't understand faces. The eyes were too still. The mouth was too relaxed. The skin looked dry and gray under the hallway light. He raised one hand and touched the gate. The metal rattled in the real station. I stepped backwards so fast I hit the cigarette cabinet. The mirrors showed the hallway gate moving by itself. On camera 5, the thing wearing my jacket smiled. At 10:40 exactly, the feed flickered. Camera 5 showed an empty hallway. The gate was still. The restroom door was closed. I checked my jacket. It was on the hook by the office door, where I had left it. I didn't go near the hallway until after midnight. At 11, the rules said. 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. If the radio asks for weather, say clear. If it asks for road conditions, say closed. If it asks for you, say nothing. The radio was an old two-way unit under the counter, left over from when Earl said the station helped park maintenance and highway patrol during storms. It had a square microphone with a coiled cord and a row of worn buttons. Most of the time it hissed softly, picking up nothing. At 11:07, it crackled. Hollow Rock, this is Unit 6. Weather? The voice was male. Far away. Buried under static. I picked up the mic. Clear. Static. Copy. Road conditions? I swallowed. Closed. Static again. Then, after a long pause, do you have Caleb there? I set the mic down. The radio hissed. Do you have Caleb there? I turned the volume knob down to 1, because that was close enough to rule 4 for me. It still hissed, tiny and sharp. At 11:21, my cell phone vibrated. I almost laughed from relief when I saw Shane's name. I answered. Man, I said, keeping my voice low. What the hell is this place? There was a pause. Then Shane said, You took it? You're the one who told me about it. Yeah, he said. But I didn't think you'd actually take it. That made me angry enough to forget being scared for a second. You said it was easy money. It is if you follow Earl's stuff. Why didn't you tell me? Another pause. I could hear traffic on his end. He was somewhere normal. Somewhere with other cars and people and lights that didn't hum like insects. Because you think I was crazy. I'm starting to think that anyway. He breathed out. How many nights have you done? Second. You'll be fine. You worked here? No. Then how do you know? My cousin did. I looked toward the back hallway. DML? What? The watch has initials. No. My cousin's name was Tyler. Where is he? Shane didn't answer. Where is he? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I mean one day he left a voicemail saying he was done, and then nobody heard from him. Earl said he quit and went north. Did you believe that? No. The radio hissed under the counter. Even turned down, I heard something come through. A small, thin voice. Caleb. I froze. Shane said. What was that? The radio whispered again. This time, it used my full name. Caleb Martin Voss. I hung up on Shane and turned the volume knob all the way down. The whisper continued. Not from the speaker. From the counter. From the metal shelves. From the coolers. From the corners of the store. Caleb Martin Voss. The rule came back to me before I moved. Do not answer the radio if the caller uses your full name. Turn the volume down to 1 until you hear the word clear 3 times. I had turned it lower than 1. I don't know why that felt like a mistake, but it did. I reached under the counter and very slowly turned the knob back up to 1. The whisper stopped. Static filled the room. A voice said, "Clear." Then, much farther away, "Clear." Then, right behind me, so close I felt breath move the hair above my ear. "Clear." I did not turn around. I kept my eyes on the cigarette cabinet until midnight. That was my second night. On my third night, I almost quit before my shift started. I found Earl outside by the propane cage at dusk, smoking a cigarette with one hand tucked under his armpit against the cold. The sun was low, and the desert had that copper color it gets for a few minutes before everything goes blue. I told him I couldn't do it. He nodded like he had been waiting. "Okay." That surprised me. "You're not going to argue?" "No. I mean it. I'm leaving." "Then leave before dark." I looked at my truck parked by the side door. The sky was already dimming. "Why before dark?" Earl flicked ash onto the gravel. "Because once your shift starts, you're on shift." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got." I wanted to hate him. It would have been easier if he was cruel, or crazy, or obviously hiding something. But Earl just looked tired. Tired and scared in a way he had learned to carry without showing much. "Why do you stay?" I asked. He looked past me toward the boarded cabins across the highway. "Somebody has to." "No, they don't. It's a gas station." He nodded. "Yeah." That was when Tess arrived. Tess worked day shift 4 days a week. She was in her 50s, short hair, cigarette voice, always wearing fingerless gloves because she said the register made her hands cold. I had only met her once in passing. She came in carrying a plastic grocery bag and a thermos. "You're the new night kid," she said. "I'm 29. "You're the new night kid." Earl told her I was thinking of leaving. She studied me for a moment, then set her bag on the counter. "First 3 are the worst." "That's not as comforting as you think." "No," she said. "It isn't." She pulled a pack of gum from her bag and offered me one. I took it. "You ever work nights?" I asked. "Not anymore." "Why?" She looked toward the diner. "Because I answered the wrong phone." I waited for her to explain. She didn't. At 7:58, Earl held the door for Tess, and the two of them stepped outside. Earl paused before leaving. "If you go," he said, "go now." I looked at my truck. Then at the station. Then at the road. A car passed without slowing. Its headlights moved across the windows and disappeared. I thought about my rent. I thought about the $200 from the first night. I thought about going back to Reno with no job and no plan. "I'll do one more," I said. Earl closed his eyes for half a second. Maybe relief. Maybe disappointment. At 8 I locked in. The expression sounds dramatic, but that's what Earl called it. Locking in? The doors stayed unlocked for customers unless a rule said otherwise, but the employee entrance, office door, and hallway gate were secured. The register drawer was counted. The safe drop was checked. The camera monitor was reset. The night watch went on my wrist. At 9, the printer didn't print. That bothered me more than the rules had. I waited 5 minutes. Nothing. 10 minutes. Nothing. The receipt printer sat quiet, green light steady. The laminated sheet said to check at the top of every hour. If it prints a new rule, follow it. It did not say what to do if it didn't print. I told myself no rule meant normal rules. Then the first customer came in. He was a park ranger. At least, he looked like one. Green uniform, heavy jacket, flat-brim hat tucked under one arm. He was maybe 40, with windburned cheeks and a gray beard. He carried a paper map folded wrong. The bell above the door jingled. He looked around the store like he had never seen it before. "Evening," I said. He nodded. "Road open east?" "As far as I know." He walked to the counter and laid the map down. "I'm trying to get to Silver Bow Campground." The air in the room seemed to lower. Not the temperature. The air itself. I looked at the laminated sheet beside the register. Rule 6. If anyone asks for directions to Silver Bow Campground, say, "That road closed in 1998. Say it once. If they ask again, go to the stockroom and count 60 cans before coming back out. I looked back at the ranger. He waited politely. "That road closed in 1998, I said. He frowned, not angry. Confused. "No," he said. "I was there this morning." I said nothing. He leaned over the map and tapped the place with one finger. "I came through from the north side. Took the service road. I must have missed the turn after the wash. Can you show me?" I stepped back from the counter. He looked up. "Can you show me?" I went to the stockroom. I know that sounds easy, but it wasn't. Walking away from someone who looks normal is harder than running from something that doesn't. Every part of your social brain tells you to answer, to help, to explain, to not be rude. He had a uniform. He had a map. He looked tired and lost. I went through the door behind the counter and shut it. The stockroom was narrow and cold. Metal shelves stacked with canned soup, motor oil, antifreeze, paper towels, windshield fluid, and cases of energy drinks. The light flickered twice when I pulled the cord. "Count 60 cans." I started with chili. 1, 2, 3. From the other side of the door, the ranger called. "I can still see the sign from here." I kept counting. 4, 5, 6. He knocked once. "Employee entrance is marked on the map." 7, 8, 9. His voice changed. "Not much. Just enough. I don't want to be late." I counted faster. At 23, I heard the front door bell. At 31, I heard footsteps in the store. At 46, I heard something drag across the floor. At 60, I stopped. The station was silent. I waited another 10 seconds, then opened the stockroom door. The ranger was gone. The map was still on the counter. Only now it was unfolded flat. It showed the area around Hollow Rock, but wrong. The highway was in the right place. The gas station was in the right place. The old motel cabins were there too, labeled Hollow Rock Lodging. Behind the station, where there should have been a dry hill of volcanic rock and nothing else, the map showed a road. A thin black line winding up into the hills. At the end of it, in small letters, were the words, "Silver Bow Campground." I folded the map without looking too closely and shoved it under the counter. At 10, the printer finally chattered. The slip said, 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Do not touch any map left on the counter. I looked at the folded map under my hand. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe right. I let go of it. Nothing happened. No sound. No lights flickering. No hand grabbing me from beneath the counter. That somehow made it worse. I got a pair of tongs from the coffee station, picked up the map with them, and dropped it into the trash. Then I took the trash bag outside to the dumpster before I could think about it. The cold hit me hard. The desert at night in winter is not just cold. It is empty cold. There are no buildings to hold warmth, no trees to block the wind. It comes at you straight. I walked fast to the dumpster. The lot behind the station was lit by one weak bulb over the side door and the distant glow from the canopy lights out front. Beyond that was dark scrubland and a low black hill. I threw the bag in. When the lid slammed shut, something knocked back from inside. 3 times. Not random shifting trash. Knock. 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 Then a voice inside the dumpster said, "Count them again." I ran back inside and locked the side door. At 11, the printer said. 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. The man in the diner is not waiting for food. Do not ask what he wants. I didn't look at the diner right away. I stood at the register and tried to breathe through my nose. Then I raised my eyes. There was a man sitting in the last booth. The diner lights were off except for the old warmer lamp over the pass-through window, but I could see him. He sat with his back to me, wearing a dark coat. His shoulders were narrow. His hair was neatly combed. Both hands rested on the table in front of him. I could see him directly through the pass-through. On camera 6, the diner was empty. That bothered me. Earlier, the camera had shown what the room didn't. Now the room showed what the camera didn't. The rules changed every hour, but the station changed the rest of the time. That was how it felt. Like rules were not laws. Just temporary agreements. The man sat there for 40 minutes. He did not move. No customers came in. No cars passed. The coffee burned in the pot and made the station smell bitter. At 11:48, the diner bell rang. The man still did not move. I checked the laminated sheet. Rule 3 said coffee. The hourly slip said he was not waiting for food and not to ask what he wanted. Coffee wasn't food, I told myself. That was the kind of reasoning you fall into out there. Tiny legal arguments with a piece of paper while something impossible sits 20 feet away. I poured black coffee. When I placed it on the pass-through counter, the man in the booth spoke. His voice was soft. "Not for me." I froze. He still faced away. "Then who is it for?" I almost asked. Almost. The rule came back before I moved. Do not ask what he wants. I set the cup down and stepped back. The man lifted one hand from the table and pointed to the stool nearest the pass-through. There was someone sitting there. I had not seen them before. A small figure. A child, maybe. Sitting very still on one of the red stools, facing the diner counter. They wore a hooded jacket with the hood up. Their legs dangled above the floor. I looked away immediately. Not because a rule told me to. Because something in me refused to keep looking. Behind me, the radio crackled. I did not answer. A child's voice whispered through the speaker. "Thank you." At midnight, the printer did not print a rule. Instead, all the lights in the store went out. Only the pumps outside stayed on. The coolers went silent. The heater stopped. The darkness was complete for maybe 2 seconds, then the emergency light over the hallway clicked on, casting everything in a dim red glow. I stood behind the counter and listened. In the diner, something scraped against the floor. A chair leg. Then another. Then another. Like every chair and stool was being moved at once. I kept my eyes down. The receipt printer chattered in the dark. A slip printed, pale in the red light. I tore it off with fingers that barely worked. 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. Do not count the chairs. I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because I had been about to. The sound from the diner stopped. At 12:11, the power came back. The diner was empty. Every stool sat exactly where it belonged. But the coffee cup on the pass-through was gone. In its place was a child's mitten. Blue with a white snowflake on the back. It was wet with melted snow. I put it in the lost and found box under the register. In the morning, it was gone. That third night should have been the end. It wasn't. After my shift, Earl found the map in the dumpster. Not physically. I don't think he dug through it. He came in at 8, looked at me, and said, "You touched the map." I had no energy left to lie. The rule printed after. He rubbed both eyes with his thumb and finger. "Did you read it?" "Some." "How much?" "Enough." He nodded slowly. "That road isn't there." "I know." "No," he said. "You don't." Tess arrived at 8:15 and looked at us both. Then she said to me, "Go sleep before you start seeing daytime stuff." That was another thing I didn't want explained. I slept 4 hours. When I woke, Shane had left me 3 missed calls and a voicemail. I played it sitting on the edge of the cot. His voice was low and rushed. "Caleb, listen. I talked to my aunt about Tyler. He didn't quit." "Not exactly. She said he came home after his last shift, but he wasn't right. He kept asking what hour it was. He wouldn't go near receipts. He said he had to be back by 9 because someone had taken over his voice. Then he left in the middle of the night. They found his car 3 days later out by an old service road. No Tyler. Just the radio from the station on the passenger seat. I don't know if Earl knows. Don't say your name on the radio. Don't." The voicemail cut off. I replayed it twice. Then I called him back. It went straight to voicemail. At 5, I went into the store. Tess was behind the register, reading a paperback with a cracked spine. Earl was in the office doing invoices. "Your friend called," Tess said. "Shane?" "Didn't give a name." "When?" "About 2. What did he say?" She turned a page. "Said he was trying to reach you. And I told him you were sleeping." A cold feeling moved through me. "Did he ask if I was alone?" Tess looked up then. "No." The way she said it told me she understood the question. I checked my phone. No new calls. At 6:12, a silver sedan pulled into Pump 2. A man got out, filled his tank, came inside, bought sunflower seeds, and asked Tess how far to Ely. Everything normal. I watched from the aisle pretending to organize oil funnels. When he left, Tess said, "You're staring at customers." "Sorry. Don't start seeing it everywhere. That's how it gets you." I walked to the counter. "What is it?" She closed her book. "Wrong question. What's the right one? How do I get through my shift?" I didn't like that answer. I was starting to understand that nobody who worked at Hollow Rock talked about the thing directly. Not Earl, not Tess, not Shane. They talked around it. They talked about shifts and rules and hours. They treated the impossible like bad weather. Something you didn't understand. Something you respected anyway. That evening, before Earl left, he gave me a new roll of receipt paper. "Printer's low." I stared at it. "You said don't pull paper after midnight. This is before midnight. Why does it matter?" He looked toward the register. "Because after midnight, it isn't always empty." I did not ask what that meant. I replaced the roll at 7:47 with Earl standing beside me. Inside the printer, under the old paper tube, there was a folded strip of receipt paper. I saw it before Earl did. It had my handwriting on it. Not similar. Mine. The same uneven C. The same way I crossed my T too high. I pulled my hand back. Earl saw my face and reached in with a pair of pliers from his pocket. He removed the paper carefully and held it over the sink. Then he lit it with a match. As it burned, I read the first line. "Caleb, do not trust Earl. The rest blackened before I could see it. Earl dropped the ash into the sink and ran water over it. Rule 7, he said. I didn't write that. I know. How can it be my handwriting? He looked at me for a long time. It learns by pieces. What pieces? Receipts. Signatures. Voices. Reflections. Anything you leave too long. I thought of the receipt with my name. The radio whisper. My copied driver's license in the office. My face on camera 5. Earl seemed to know what I was thinking. Keep less of yourself out where it can get to it. That was the closest thing to an explanation he ever gave me. At 9, my fourth night began. The printer produced a slip immediately. 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Keep your bad knee still if you hear running outside. I had never told Earl which knee I hurt. At 9:36, something ran past the front windows. Fast. Bare feet slapping on concrete. I did not move. The sound went from left to right, around the side of the building, then behind it. It circled once. Twice. 3 times. Each time it passed the windows, I saw nothing. My bad knee ached under the counter. On the 4th pass, the running stopped at the front door. The bell jingled. No one entered. I looked down and realized my foot had shifted forward without me meaning to. My knee was bent, ready to step. I forced it still. A voice outside said, "You used to run faster." It was my father's voice. My father had been dead for 6 years. Not in some mysterious way. Heart attack. He was 58. He died in his kitchen in sparks, one hand on the counter, coffee spilled across the tile. I found out from my sister, not from some dream or omen. There had been a funeral. Bills. Arguments over the truck. Real grief. Ordinary grief. His voice came through the glass like he was standing outside the door. You remember that summer by Pyramid Lake? You ran all the way down the shore. I put both hands on the counter. The station smelled like coffee and dust. You were all knees and elbows, he said. Couldn't keep shoes on you. I closed my eyes. That memory was real. Too real. My dad used to tease me because I hated wearing shoes at the lake. I would run barefoot over rocks and pretend they didn't hurt. He called me Jackrabbit. Nobody else did. The voice outside said, "Open the door, Jackrabbit." The front door was already unlocked. That was what nearly got me. I turned my head slowly. The door had a push bar and a small metal latch Earl said not to use unless instructed. It was unlocked, but closed. If someone pulled from outside, it would open. Nobody pulled. "Open it," my father said. "I can't come in unless you open it." The rules said keep my bad knee still if I heard running outside. It didn't say anything about voices. But my knee had started bouncing under the counter. Small movement. Nervous habit. The moment I noticed, the voice stopped. Silence. Then my father whispered, much closer. "There you are." I pressed both hands down on my knee and held it until 10. At 10, the printer said, 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. You may move now. That was the hour I realized the rules had timing, but the thing had patience. For several nights after that, I settled into a pattern. That sounds insane, but people can adapt to almost anything when there is routine around it. I learned to do the normal work first. Restock before 10. Mop before midnight. Brew fresh coffee at the top of every odd hour unless told otherwise. Check the bathrooms only when the hallway light was normal. Keep my phone on silent. Don't look at camera 8. Don't let customers stand too long near the diner. Don't mention the rules unless someone else did first. Most nights had only 1 or 2 incidents. Some had none. Those were almost worse. A silent night at Hollow Rock did not feel safe. It felt like being watched by something pretending to sleep. There were ordinary customers too. That mattered. Real people came through. A family in a minivan on their way to Utah. 2 highway workers with thermoses and mud on their boots. A woman driving alone who asked if she could wait inside until the snow squall passed. Hunters. Truckers. Lost tourists. Park employees. People who were cold and tired and just wanted gas, coffee, a bathroom, and directions. With them, I was normal. I smiled. I made change. I said the road east was open or closed depending on what Earl told me. I apologized when the card reader froze. I cleaned spilled creamer. I sold lottery tickets. Then they left, and the station became Hollow Rock again. The false normal was the cruelest part. One night at 2 o'clock, the printer told me. 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. If someone cries in the walk-in cooler, do not open it. We do not have a walk-in cooler. We didn't. At 2:14, I heard a woman sobbing behind the drink cases. The coolers were built into the wall. There was no room behind them, no storage space, no door. Just compressors and concrete. The crying went on for 17 minutes. At 2:32, a trucker came in and bought coffee. He did not hear it. He stood 8 feet from the coolers, stirring sugar into his cup, while a woman behind them begged someone named Anna to let her out. "Cold night," he said. "Yeah," I said. The crying stopped the second he walked out. In the morning, Earl asked why I looked bad. I told him about the crying. He checked the maintenance log and said, "No cooler trouble." That was it. Another night, the printer said. 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. Do not sell anything with salt. For 1 hour, every customer who entered wanted something salty. Pretzels. Chips. Jerky. Salted peanuts. The first was an old woman with a cane. The second was a teenage boy in a hoodie. The third was a park maintenance worker I had seen before. All of them were polite. All of them acted confused when I said I couldn't sell those items. At 1:51, the front door opened and my sister walked in. Her name is Emily. She lives in Carson City. She has never been to Hollow Rock. She looked exactly like herself. Same dark hair pulled back. Same gray coat. Same tired eyes. She carried a bag of salt and vinegar chips to the counter. I could not speak. She smiled, but it wasn't right. Emily smiles with half her face first, like she's trying not to. This smile arrived all at once. "Hey, Cal," she said. "Can you ring me up?" I looked at the chips. Then at her hands. There was a small scar across her left thumb from when we broke a glass dish as kids. It was there. "Where's my sister?" I asked. Her smile stayed. "At home." "Then who are you?" The smile twitched. Behind me, the receipt printer began to hum. Not print. Hum. Emily leaned forward. "You can sell me chips." "No. It's not fuel. It's not coffee. It's not one of the big rules." "No." Her eyes moved to the laminated sheet. "You don't even know why it matters." That was true. She set the chips on the counter and pushed them toward me. "I drove all this way." "No." She stood there until 2 o'clock. At exactly 2 o'clock, the printer spat out a blank receipt. My sister, or the thing wearing her, looked toward the front windows. For the first time, the smile dropped. It looked scared. Then it walked out. I called Emily the next morning. She answered annoyed because I had woken her up. She was home. She had been home all night. She called me an idiot and told me to stop working weird jobs. I almost told her everything. I didn't. I didn't want it to learn more about her. By the second week, I had started keeping my own notebook. Not in the station. Earl told me not to leave writing there. I kept it in my truck during shifts and wrote after sunrise, parked half a mile down the road where the cell service was better. I wrote every rule that printed. Every incident. Every time. Every customer that felt wrong. Every ordinary thing that happened around it. Patterns emerged. The rules usually came at the top of the hour, but the situation they warned about happened between 12 and 40 minutes after. Rules that mentioned cameras made the cameras less reliable. Rules that mentioned voices made voices more likely. Rules that mentioned names were dangerous. Rules that seemed silly usually mattered most. Once, at midnight, the rule was 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. Put a spoon in the freezer. That was all. I almost didn't do it. There was a small freezer near the ice cream bars. I put a plastic spoon inside, feeling like an idiot. At 12:37, every metal object behind the counter warmed up. The register drawer handle. The coffee pot rim. The safe drop slot. The radio microphone. All of them became too hot to touch. The plastic spoon in the freezer stayed cold. At 12:58, something under the counter whispered, "You could have held on." Another rule said, 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. Place 3 pennies heads up on the diner counter. I did. At 3:22, the diner bell rang 3 times. When I checked at 4, 2 pennies were gone. The third had been turned tails up. I asked Earl about that one. He went quiet. Did you touch the tails up penny? No. Good. What would have happened? He looked at the floor. It would have been yours. My what? Just good you didn't touch it. That was all. The longer I stayed, the less I asked why. That scared me too. Not just the rules. My own acceptance of them. I began to think in hollow rock logic. I stopped needing reasons. I cared only whether an instruction worked. If a slip told me to turn all labels toward the wall, I did it. If it said not to speak between 2:10 and 2:19, I didn't. If it told me to leave the women's restroom key in the microwave, I did that too. One night the rule said 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. When the second sunrise starts, close your eyes. At 4:44, light filled the eastern windows. Not dim gray dawn. Bright morning light. I could feel warmth on my face. Birds started singing. Cars passed outside. A man laughed near the pumps. My whole body wanted to look. I had been awake all night. I wanted morning so badly that my eyes watered from keeping them closed. Someone knocked on the glass. Station open? I didn't answer. The warmth got stronger. The birds got louder. Then Tessa's voice said, Caleb, honey, you can open up. It's day. I knew Tess would never call me honey. I kept my eyes shut until 5. When I opened them, the windows were black. No cars. No birds. No morning. Just the pumps under the canopy lights and my reflection in the glass. But my reflection's eyes were still closed. I turned away before they opened. There is something else I should explain about the station. It had a wall clock above the cigarette cabinet. White face. Black numbers. Read second hand. Earl said it was closest to right. Not right. Closest. The receipt printer used the register clock, which ran fast unless reset. My watch slowly lost time. My phone would sometimes jump forward or backward by a minute. But the wall clock stayed steady, or seemed to. I started trusting that clock more than I trusted my own body. That became a problem. because the station knew that too. Near the end of my second week, the clock stopped at 2:17. The rule that hour was 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. If the clock stops, do not correct it. Wait for someone else to notice. No one else was there. The red second hand froze just past the 3. I stood behind the counter and watched it for what felt like 10 minutes. My watch said 2:18, then 2:19. The register clock said 2:21. My phone said 2:14. The station held its breath. I did not correct the clock. At 2:31 by my watch, a car pulled in. A real one. I heard tires on gravel. Saw headlights through the window. Camera 1 showed a blue pickup at pump 2. A woman got out, wrapped in a heavy coat, and hurried inside. She was real. I know she was real because she had a credit card that worked, because her breath fogged in the cold, because she complained about the wind, because she had mud on her boots that she tracked across the floor and I had to mop later. She filled her tank and came in for coffee. As I rang her up, she looked at the wall clock. "Your clock stopped." I said nothing. She laughed a little. "Been a long night?" "Yeah." "You want me to fix it?" She reached up. The clock was not high. Anyone could reach it from the customer's side if they stood on their toes. I said too sharply, "Please don't." She froze. I forced a smile. "Sorry. It's old. Earl gets mad if customers touch stuff." She lowered her hand. "Well, Earl sounds like a joy." She paid and left. The moment her taillights disappeared west, the clock started ticking again. At the same time, the receipt printer spat out a slip. Not an hourly rule. A receipt. 1 black coffee. Fuel pump 2, $41.16. Customer paid with card. Below that, customer noticed. "Thank you." The next morning, Earl asked if anyone had commented on the clock. I said yes. He cursed under his breath. "That bad?" I asked. He opened the clock and removed the battery. Then he put the same battery back in. "Depends who notices." She was real. He looked at me. "They can be real and still be used." That sentence stayed with me. Because after that, I stopped trusting customers entirely. And that is not a good way to live. I began watching people's hands. Their shoes. Their reflections in the cooler doors. Whether the bell above the door moved before or after they entered. Whether their breath fogged. Whether they cast shadows in the right direction. Most did. A few did not. One man bought a pack of gum and had no reflection in the dark front window. One woman asked to use the restroom and came back out with dry hair, though it had been wet when she went in. A teenage boy stood in the chip aisle for 12 minutes, staring at the Fritos, then asked me what year it was. When I told him, he cried. I did not know if he was real. I did not ask. During those days, Shane kept calling. Sometimes he sounded normal. Sometimes he didn't. At first, I answered only during daylight. Then I stopped answering altogether, because one afternoon his voice left a voicemail saying, "Caleb, I'm outside," while I was standing in the lot looking at an empty highway. The real Shane sent texts. I think they were real, anyway. "Quit, man. Call me. This isn't worth it." Then one message came in at 3:03 a.m. while I was on shift. I know Rule 7 is wrong. I turned my phone off. At the end of my second week, Earl paid me in cash again. More than he owed me. I counted it in the office. "This is too much." "Bonus." "For what?" "Staying." I should have thrown it back at him. Instead, I put it in my wallet. He watched me do it. "You got someone you send money to?" "My sister sometimes." Don't talk about her here. I figured. Not just nights. Here. He meant the station. The building. The property. Maybe the road around it. That afternoon, I drove west into town and sat in the parking lot of the grocery store for almost an hour. I had enough money now to leave. Not enough to fix my life, but enough to leave Hollow Rock. I bought food. I bought socks. I bought a cheap motel room in town for one night, just to sleep somewhere else. At 8:15 that evening, I woke up to my phone buzzing. Earl. I let it ring. Then Tess. Then Shane. Then an unknown number. Then my sister. I answered Emily's call because I panicked. Caleb? She said. What's wrong? What do you mean? You called me. No, you called me. 3 times. I sat up. My motel room was dark except for the TV glow. Some game show was playing with the volume muted. I didn't. Okay, she said slowly. Well, your voicemail was weird. What voicemail? You said you needed me to come get you. My mouth went dry. I didn't say that. You sounded bad. Emily, listen to me. Do not come here. Come where? Anywhere near me. Don't drive east. Don't answer if I call at night. Don't. The line crackled. Then my own voice spoke through the phone. Calm. Close. Tired. Tell her the road is open. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and fell behind the bed. For a while, I just sat there. Then someone knocked on the motel room door. 3 times. Knock. 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 A woman outside said. Front desk. I didn't move. She knocked again. Sir? We had a call about this room. I looked at the clock beside the bed. 8:59 p.m. The red digits blinked. 8:59. 8:59. 8:59. I didn't open the door. At some point near dawn, I crawled behind the bed and got my phone. There were no missed calls from Earl, Tess, Shane, or Emily. No record of the call I had answered. No voicemail. I checked out at 7 and drove back to Hollow Rock. I don't know why. That is the part one have trouble explaining. It wasn't just money by then. It was something worse. I needed to know whether the station still worked without me there. I needed to know if leaving was possible. I needed Earl to tell me I was fired or that someone else had covered the shift and nothing had happened. I needed the world to be firm again. When I arrived, Earl was sitting behind the register. He looked like he hadn't slept. You missed shift, he said. I quit. He nodded. Okay. You don't care? I care. Then say something. He looked at the receipt printer. It was out of paper. The empty roll lay on the counter. We had a hard night, Earl said. Who's we? He did not answer. From the diner, the service bell rang once. Earl closed his eyes. Ding. Neither of us moved. Ding. What happens if no one serves it? I asked. Earl opened his eyes. Things back up. What things? He stood slowly, took a cup from the stack, and poured coffee. His hand shook. Go home, Caleb. I watched him place the cup on the pass-through counter. He returned to the register without looking. Behind him, the cup slid out of sight. Then something else slid onto the counter. A folded receipt. Earl did not touch it. Neither did I. It unfolded by itself. The handwriting was mine. Earl stared at it. I read it from where I stood. Caleb is still on shift. Earl whispered. No. The lights flickered. The receipt printer, empty of paper, chattered. I heard it printing on nothing. Earl grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the front door. Go. The door would not open. He shoved the push bar. Nothing. Outside, the morning was bright. A highway crew truck rolled past. 2 men inside talking, drinking coffee, alive and normal. They didn't look at us. Earl hit the glass with his palm. No sound carried. The receipt printer chattered harder. The diner bell rang again. Ding. 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 Earl let go of my arm. His face had gone slack with something I had not seen in him before. Not fear. Recognition. What? I asked. He looked at the wall clock. It said 8:59. The second hand was frozen. It changed while you were gone, he said. What changed? He turned to me. The meaning. That was when the hourly rule printed. I know the printer had no paper. I know that. But a slip came out anyway. White. Clean. Curling into the tray. Earl tore it off. For a second, I thought he might hide it from me. Then he handed it over. 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. If the night employee leaves before being relieved, do not let him back in. I read it 3 times. I'm inside, I said. Earl nodded. His mouth had gone dry. I could hear it when he spoke. That's the problem. At first, I didn't understand. Then the rule from the laminated sheet came back to me. If a rule prints in your own handwriting, do not obey it. I had thought that meant fake rules would try to trick me. I had thought my handwriting was the danger. But it wasn't about handwriting. Not really. It was about ownership. It was about the station learning enough of a person to issue instructions from them. To make their hand into part of the system. Their voice. Their name. Their reflection. Their habits. Their bad knee. Their dead father. Their sister's scar. A rule in my handwriting did not mean I had written it. It meant something else could write as me. Maybe something else could be relieved as me. Maybe something else could leave as me. The rule had not been warning me about paper. It had been warning me about replacement. I looked toward the front windows. My truck was parked outside. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. At first all I saw was a silhouette. Then it leaned forward, and I saw my own face. Not the bad copy from camera 5. Better now. Much better. It wore my jacket. It raised one hand. Earl stepped in front of me. Don't wave back. I hadn't realized my hand had started to lift. The thing in my truck smiled. Then it started the engine. I heard it. Through the glass. Through the walls. Through my bones. My truck backed away from the side of the building, turned toward the highway, and drove west. Toward town. Toward my sister. Toward my life. I ran to the door and slammed both fists against it. The glass didn't shake. Open it, I said. Earl grabbed me from behind. No. That's my truck. No. That's me. I know. I pulled away from him. The bell over the front door jingled softly, though the door never opened. A receipt printed. This one from the register, on actual paper. 1 employee relief. Time, 9:04 a.m. Status, accepted. Below that. Thank you, Earl. Earl looked at it. Then he looked at me. For the first time since I had met him, he seemed completely lost. At 9:05, the front door opened. Cold air moved into the station. The morning outside was empty. My truck was gone. The highway ran clear in both directions. I stepped toward the door. Earl said, "Don't cross." I stopped. Why? He did not tell me no why this time. He said, "Because I don't know which one of you is scheduled." That sentence did something to me. It made a break inside my head that I don't think ever healed right. I stayed. That is the truth. Not forever. Not exactly. But I stayed that day. Earl called Tess, and she came in pale and angry, carrying a canvas bag full of old notebooks. They argued in the office for almost an hour while I sat behind the counter watching the highway. Tess wanted to burn the register. Earl said that had been tried. Tess said the station was getting bold. Earl said it was hungry. Tess told him not to use that word. Nobody asked what I wanted. Maybe they knew I didn't know. At noon, Tess drove me into town. My truck was not at the motel. Not at the grocery store. Not at the bar. Not at the mechanic. Not anywhere. My phone had no service until we reached the clinic parking lot. Then messages came in all at once. Emily had texted me at 9:44. Made it home? Then at 10:02. Why are you being weird? Then at 10:05. You left your jacket here? I called her. She answered on the first ring. What the hell is going on? She said. Are you okay? Yes. Why wouldn't I be? Did I come there? There was a pause. You stopped by. My tongue felt too big in my mouth. When? Like half an hour ago. You were acting strange, but that's not new. What did I say? You didn't say much. You gave me an envelope. What envelope? Money. I closed my eyes. How much? I don't know. I didn't count it. Caleb, what is happening? I looked at Tess. She was watching the road, jaw tight. Emily, I said, listen carefully. Did I come inside? No. Earl closed his eyes. Ding. Neither of us moved. Ding. What happens if no one serves it? I asked. Earl opened his eyes. Things back up. What things? He stood slowly, took a cup from the stack, and poured coffee. His hand shook. Go home, Caleb. I watched him place the cup on the pass-through counter. He returned to the register without looking. Behind him, the cup slid out of sight. Then something else slid onto the counter. A folded receipt. Earl did not touch it. Neither did I. It unfolded by itself. The handwriting was mine. Earl stared at it. I read it from where I stood. Caleb is still on shift. Earl whispered. No. The lights flickered. The receipt printer, empty of paper, chattered. I heard it printing on nothing. Earl grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the front door. Go. The door would not open. He shoved the push bar. Nothing. Outside, the morning was bright. A highway crew truck rolled past. 2 men inside talking, drinking coffee, alive and normal. They didn't look at us. Earl hit the glass with his palm. No sound carried. The receipt printer chattered harder. The diner bell rang again. Ding. 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 Earl let go of my arm. His face had gone slack with something I had not seen in him before. Not fear. Recognition. What? I asked. He looked at the wall clock. It said 8:59. The second hand was frozen. It changed while you were gone, he said. What changed? He turned to me. The meaning. That was when the hourly rule printed. I know the printer had no paper. I know that. But a slip came out anyway. White. Clean. Curling into the tray. Earl tore it off. For a second, I thought he might hide it from me. Then he handed it over. 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. If the night employee leaves before being relieved, do not let him back in. I read it 3 times. I'm inside, I said. Earl nodded. His mouth had gone dry. I could hear it when he spoke. That's the problem. At first, I didn't understand. Then the rule from the laminated sheet came back to me. If a rule prints in your own handwriting, do not obey it. I had thought that meant fake rules would try to trick me. I had thought my handwriting was the danger. But it wasn't about handwriting. Not really. It was about ownership. It was about the station learning enough of a person to issue instructions from them. To make their hand into part of the system. Their voice. Their name. Their reflection. Their habits. Their bad knee. Their dead father. Their sister's scar. A rule in my handwriting did not mean I had written it. It meant something else could write as me. Maybe something else could be relieved as me. Maybe something else could leave as me. The rule had not been warning me about paper. It had been warning me about replacement. I looked toward the front windows. My truck was parked outside. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. At first all I saw was a silhouette. Then it leaned forward, and I saw my own face. Not the bad copy from camera 5. Better now. Much better. It wore my jacket. It raised one hand. Earl stepped in front of me. Don't wave back. I hadn't realized my hand had started to lift. The thing in my truck smiled. Then it started the engine. I heard it. Through the glass. Through the walls. Through my bones. My truck backed away from the side of the building, turned toward the highway, and drove west. Toward town. Toward my sister. Toward my life. I ran to the door and slammed both fists against it. The glass didn't shake. Open it, I said. Earl grabbed me from behind. No. That's my truck. No. That's me. I know. I pulled away from him. The bell over the front door jingled softly, though the door never opened. A receipt printed. This one from the register, on actual paper. One employee relief. Time, 9:04 a.m. Status, accepted. Below that. Thank you, Earl. Earl looked at it. Then he looked at me. For the first time since I had met him, he seemed completely lost. At 9:05, the front door opened. Cold air moved into the station. The morning outside was empty. My truck was gone. The highway ran clear in both directions. I stepped toward the door. Earl said, "Don't cross." I stopped. Why? He did not tell me no why this time. He said, "Because I don't know which one of you is scheduled." That sentence did something to me. It made a break inside my head that I don't think ever healed right. I stayed. That is the truth. Not forever. Not exactly. But I stayed that day. Earl called Tess, and she came in pale and angry, carrying a canvas bag full of old notebooks. They argued in the office for almost an hour while I sat behind the counter watching the highway. Tess wanted to burn the register. Earl said that had been tried. Tess said the station was getting bold. Earl said it was hungry. Tess told him not to use that word. Nobody asked what I wanted. Maybe they knew I didn't know. At noon, Tess drove me into town. My truck was not at the motel. Not at the grocery store. Not at the bar. Not at the mechanic. Not anywhere. My phone had no service until we reached the clinic parking lot. Then messages came in all at once. Emily had texted me at 9:44. Made it home? Then at 10:02. Why are you being weird? Then at 10:05. You left your jacket here? I called her. She answered on the first ring. What the hell is going on? She said. Are you okay? Yes. Why wouldn't I be? Did I come there? There was a pause. You stopped by. My tongue felt too big in my mouth. When? Like half an hour ago. You were acting strange, but that's not new. What did I say? You didn't say much. You gave me an envelope. What envelope? Money. I closed my eyes. How much? I don't know. I didn't count it. Caleb, what is happening? I looked at Tess. She was watching the road, jaw tight. Emily, I said, listen carefully. Did I come inside? No. Not fuel. Not money. Not the license. It wanted a bridge. My voice to her voice. My answer to her fear. It wanted me to make the line real. The radio hissed. Please, Emily said. Someone's outside. I gripped the counter so hard my fingers hurt. I said nothing. The copy knocked on her door. Once. Twice. 3 times. Emily whispered, I know you told me not to answer. The copy leaned close to her door. On the monitor, its mouth moved. My voice came through the radio. It's cold, she cried then. Softly. I had never heard my sister sound that scared. I almost answered. Any normal brother would have. Any decent person would have. That is what the station counted on. The receipt printer chattered. A slip curled out. Not at the top of the hour. Not on schedule. I looked down. The handwriting was mine. Answer her. I backed away from it. On the radio, Emily said, Dad used to call you Jackrabbit. I closed my eyes. That was how I knew it wasn't her. Emily hated that nickname. She said it was stupid every time Dad used it. I turned the radio volume down to 1. The copy on the monitor stopped smiling. Static filled the store. A voice said, Clear. Another said, Clear. Then my own voice, from inside the coffee pot, said, Clear. The monitors went black. At midnight the hourly rule printed. 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. You did well. Drink some water. I did not. That was not one of the original rules, and maybe it was harmless, but I was done trusting kindness from paper. At 12:22, a bottle of water fell from the cooler shelf. At 12:40 another. At 12:57, every bottle in the cooler tipped forward at once and pressed against the glass like faces. I did not drink. At 1, the printer said, 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. The diner is open for breakfast. Do not correct them. The diner lights turned on. All of them. The warmer lamp. The overhead fluorescents. The little bulbs above the menu board. The room beyond the pass-through filled with people. Not all at once. They appeared the way customers arrive during a rush. 1 booth occupied, then 2 stools, then the corner booth. Men in work jackets. A woman with a baby carrier. 2 boys in baseball uniforms. An old couple sharing toast. A man in a ranger uniform with a folded map. They talked quietly among themselves. Forks scraped plates. Coffee poured. The smell of bacon drifted into the store. I stood behind the register, shaking. Because none of that was the worst part. The worst part was that they were not looking at me. They were acting like I wasn't there. Like the diner was real and the gas station was the closed part. A waitress moved behind the diner counter. Her back was to me. Gray dress. White apron. Hair pinned up. She picked up the coffee pot and filled cups. The service bell rang. Ding. The waitress turned. It was Tess. Not current Tess. Younger. Maybe 30. No lines around her mouth. No fingerless gloves. She looked tired but alive in a way the real Tess didn't anymore. She leaned into the pass-through and looked at me. "You're late," she said. I did not answer. She pointed to the menu board. "Breakfast rush doesn't cover itself." I looked at the hourly rule. "The diner is open for breakfast. Do not correct them." So I didn't. I stood there while the diner worked around me. At 1:37, the man in the ranger uniform came to the pass-through with his map. "You know the way to Silver Bow?" he asked. I said nothing. He smiled politely. "I asked if you know the way?" The stockroom door behind me clicked open. I did not turn. "The younger Tess said," answered the man. I did not. At 2, the diner lights went out. The room was empty. But one plate sat on the pass-through counter. 2 eggs. Toast. Bacon. Hash browns. Still hot. The receipt printer printed. 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. Do not eat what you miss. That rule hurt more than it should have. By then I was hungry enough to feel sick. I threw the plate into the trash. The trash can burp softly after I put the lid on. At 3, no rule printed. I waited. Nothing. I checked the paper. Full roll. Green light. No jam. At 3:05, the phone rang. I did not answer. At 3:08, the radio crackled. I did not answer. At 3:11, someone knocked from inside the restroom. I did not move. At 3:14, my truck pulled into the lot again. I saw it through the front window. It parked at pump 1 this time. The copy got out. It no longer wore my jacket. It wore Earl's Green Park Service jacket. The old one. It walked to the front door and came inside. The bell jingled. I should have been more afraid than I was. Instead, I felt tired. The copy stood just inside the entrance, looking around the store. Up close, it was almost right. The face. The eyes. The stubble. Even the small scar under my chin from a bike accident when I was 12. But it breathed wrong. Too evenly. Like a machine imitating rest. "Night's almost over," it said. It sounded exactly like me. I said nothing. It smiled. "You know I can talk without you." I kept my eyes on the counter. "You know I can drive. I can sign. I can knock. I can ask." It walked closer. "I can be tired. I can be sorry. I can say please." The radio hissed. My sister's voice whispered, "Please." I clenched my teeth. The copy stopped in front of the counter. "You think the rules protect you?" I did not answer. "They protect the shift." It leaned forward. "You're just where the shift sits." The printer chattered. A slip came out. My handwriting. "Ask what it wants." I laughed then. Quietly. I couldn't help it. The copy's smile faded. I didn't ask. At 4, the real hourly rule printed over the handwritten one, pushing it off the tray. 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. If he tells the truth, do not believe the next thing he says. The copy looked at the rule. Then it looked at me. For a while, neither of us moved. Finally it said, "I was here before the station." That felt true. I don't know how else to put it. Not true like a fact. True like cold. It continued. The road came later. The pumps came later. The diner came later. Men put names on land and thought names held. That was too much like an explanation. Too big. Too old. The rule told me not to believe the next thing he said. So I waited for it. The copy leaned closer. "You can leave at sunrise." I almost cried. Because I wanted to believe that. I wanted it so badly my chest hurt. At 5, the printer said. 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. Sunrise is not relief. The copy was gone. The front door was closed. Outside, the sky had started to lighten. Real sunrise, I think. It looked gray and ordinary, not warm and false like before. The mountains slowly came into shape. The pumps looked dirty. The windows showed streaks. The trash can by pump 2 had blown over. At 6, the printer said. 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. When Earl arrives, ask him what year he started. That was all. I waited by the register. At 6:48, Earl's truck pulled in. He usually came at 8. He parked near the side door, got out, and walked inside with his thermos. The bell jingled. He looked exhausted. Long night? He asked. I did not answer his question. What year did you start? I asked. Earl stopped. His eyes moved to the receipt printer. What? What year did you start working here? He set his thermos on the counter. 89. The printer did nothing. I breathed out. Then Earl said, No. 91. The receipt printer chattered. A slip came out. 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Wrong, Earl. The man at the counter looked at the slip. Then at me. His face did not change. That made it worse. He sighed, almost sadly. You were doing fine. I stepped back. He reached across the counter, not fast, not grabbing, just reaching like someone trying to comfort a child. The hallway gate behind me rattled. The diner bell rang. The cameras went black one by one. The man who was not Earl said, Say your name and this can end. I backed into the cigarette cabinet. He came around the counter. Slowly. Not chasing. Just closing the distance. Say your name, he said. Confirm who worked the shift. The rule from earlier came back. The one I had misunderstood. If the night employee leaves before being relieved, do not let him back in. Relief was not a person. Relief was acknowledgement. A shift ended when someone accepted who had worked it. A name on a receipt. A voice on a radio. A signature. A witness. That was why names mattered. That was why full names mattered. That was why a copied license mattered. It was trying to make me confirm myself as the employee. So it could be the one relieved. So it could leave wearing the rest. The wrong Earl stopped 3 feet from me. Just say it. I looked past him to the windows. The real Earl's truck was not outside. The sky was brightening. The wall where the clock had been showed a pale circle. I said nothing. The wrong Earl's face twitched. Not angry. Impatient. The printer chattered again. A long receipt spilled out, curling onto the floor. Line after line. Employee name required. Employee name required. Employee name required. Employee name required. The wrong Earl whispered, You can't stay quiet forever. He was right. That was the worst part. I could survive an hour. A night. Maybe a few nights. But not forever. Everyone speaks eventually. Everyone answers someone. Everyone slips. At 7:12, Tess arrived. Real Tess. I knew because she came through the front door holding a tire iron, and the first thing she did was swing it at the wrong Earl's head. It passed through him like smoke through a fan. The temperature dropped so fast my breath fogged. Tess grabbed my sleeve. Stockroom. We ran. Not from a monster. From paperwork. From the printer screaming behind us. From the radio clicking on and off. From the diner full of chairs scraping backward. From every cooler door opening at once. In the stockroom, Tess slammed the door and shoved a shelf in front of it. Count, she said. What? Cans. Count. I started counting. Soup first. 1, 2, 3. Behind the door, the wrong Earl spoke in my voice. Caleb, stop. I counted. 4, 5, 6. Tess whispered. Don't stop until 60. At 19, my sister cried outside the door. At 28, my father told me he was proud. At 36, Shane begged me to open up. At 42, Earl cursed and told me Tess was lying. At 51, my own voice said, I'm tired. At 60, everything stopped. Tess lowered herself onto a crate and pressed both hands to her face. For a few minutes, we sat in the cold stockroom breathing hard. Then she said, Earl started in 89. I know. He never gets that wrong. Where is he? She didn't answer. We waited until 8. No Earl. At 8:05, the printer stopped. At 8:10, Tess opened the stockroom door. The store looked normal. Coolers closed. Diner empty. Register steady. Morning light through dirty windows. On the counter was a single receipt. Tess read it first. Her face changed. Then she handed it to me. Shift relief pending. Manager override required. Below that, in Earl's handwriting, were 2 words. I accept. Tess sat down on the floor. I had never seen her cry before. We found Earl's truck behind the station. Engine running. Driver's door open. No Earl. His thermos sat in the cup holder. His cap was on the seat. The old green Park Service jacket lay folded across the steering wheel. On the windshield, written from the inside in a thin film of frost, was my full name. Not Earl's. Mine. Tess wiped it away with her sleeve before I could read it twice. After that, things get harder to explain. Tess became manager, I guess. Not officially. Officially, Earl was missing, then presumed gone, then maybe nothing. Hollow Rock had never been good with paperwork. Some company in Elko owned the property, or some trust did, or nobody did. I never understood the business side. Fuel deliveries still came. Sandwich crates still appeared. Power stayed on. Taxes must have been paid by someone. The station continued. That is the part that makes people angry when I tell them. They want the place burned down. They want me to call police, firefighters, priests, news crews, park rangers, anyone. We tried some of that. Police came once, after Tess reported Earl missing. A deputy walked through the store at noon, took notes, checked behind the station, asked me when I last saw Earl, and bought a coffee before leaving. He said adults had a right to disappear if they wanted. He said they would keep an eye out. The next week, he came back at 2 a.m. Not in uniform. He stood outside by Pump 3, barefoot in the snow, asking for directions to Silver Bow Campground. I never saw the real deputy again. Fire was discussed. Tess said Earl once tried to burn the diner side in 2004. The fire department found scorch marks but no active fire. 3 firefighters heard children laughing under the floor and refused to come back after dark. The gas tanks should have made burning the place easy and terrible. They didn't. Nothing that should have ended Hollow Rock ever seemed able to begin there. As for quitting, I did leave. For 2 days. I went to Carson City and stayed with Emily. I slept on her couch. I kept the curtains closed. I did not answer unknown calls. I did not look at receipts. I thought maybe distance would make the station fade into something I could call a breakdown. On the second night, Emily came home from work and found a stack of laminated rules on her kitchen table. Not Hollow Rock rules. House rules. 1. If Caleb knocks after midnight, ask what hour it is. 2. If Caleb says he is cold, do not invite him in. 3. If Caleb uses Dad's nickname, leave through the back door. 4. If Caleb asks for coffee, pour it into the sink. 5. If Caleb says he has been relieved, do not believe him. She read them. Then she looked at me. I went back to Hollow Rock before sunset. Not because I was brave. Because the station had followed me home. Because Tess was right. It goes where you're easiest to open. Months passed. I learned more. Not explanations. Never those. Procedures. I learned that the rules changed every hour because whatever sat under Hollow Rock, or behind it, or around it, could only press so hard against routine before routine pressed back. The station was a workplace. Workplaces have schedules. Shifts. Tasks. Logs. Breaks. Rules. Maybe that structure held something in place. Maybe people like Earl and Tess had built a cage out of small duties because that was all they had. Make coffee. Count cans. Don't answer. Don't look. Say the road closed in 1998. Again and again and again. I learned that ordinary things were anchors. Mopping helped. Counting cigarettes helped. Restocking helped. Making change helped most of all, maybe because it required both people to agree on value. $1 was $1. A receipt was a receipt. A customer bought gum and left. Normal transactions made normal time. But some transactions went the other way. A name for a shift. A voice for a door. A memory for directions. A reflection for relief. I learned not to keep photos in the station. Not to sign anything after dark. Not to look too long at any camera showing snow. Not to trust a customer who paid exact change for something we no longer sold. Not to let pity move my hand. I also learned that some rules were not warnings. Some were offers. Drink water. Sit down. Call your sister. Go outside and see the stars. Those were the cruelest. Because after enough nights, kindness becomes the easiest trap. The thing never attacked me. Not in the way people expect. It did not tear open doors. It did not crawl on the ceiling. It did not show me some big horrible face and scream. It learned. It waited. It used small things. The sound of my father's voice when he was tired. The way Emily said my name when she wanted me to be serious. The buzz of my phone. The smell of breakfast. A blue mitten. A wet quarter. My own handwriting telling me to trust myself. That was the worst one. Because some nights, I wanted to. I have been at Hollow Rock for 11 months now. I am not sure if that is true. My phone says 11 months. The calendars in town say 11 months. The notebooks say almost 2 years. Camera 8 still shows snow. Last week, Camera 7 came back on. It shows the inside of the old motel cabin across the road. Cabin 4. The boards are still over the windows when you look outside. But on Camera 7, the room is clean. Bed made. Lamp on. Curtains moving in a breeze that shouldn't be there. Sometimes someone sits on the edge of the bed with their back to the camera. Sometimes it is Earl. Sometimes it is Shane's cousin Tyler, though I only know him from a photo Shane sent me. Sometimes it is me. When I see myself there, I turn the monitor off until the next hour. Tess says that is not one of the rules. I do it anyway. Shane came looking for me in person in March. The real Shane, I think. He arrived at 3 in the afternoon, angry and scared, driving a borrowed pickup. He shouted at me in the lot for 10 minutes. Said I sounded insane. Said Emily was worried. Said people don't just live at gas stations because of ghost rules. I let him shout. Then I took him inside and showed him the diner. In daylight, it was just dusty stools and dead chrome. He looked relieved. Then the service bell rang. Once. Shane went quiet. A cup of coffee slid across the pass-through counter by itself and stopped in front of him. Black. No steam. Shane left without drinking it. He has not called since. I don't blame him. I am recording this because Tess says it helps to leave an account somewhere the station cannot reach. I don't know if that is true. I wrote most of this in town, in the library, on a computer that smells like dust and old carpet. I paid cash for the flash drive. I did not print anything. I did not say my full name while writing it. That feels ridiculous, but ridiculous has kept me alive. Tonight is my last scheduled shift. Tess says that carefully. Scheduled. Not final. Not over. Scheduled. We have a new hire coming tomorrow. I hate that. His name is Daniel. He is 23, quiet, desperate for money, and thinks he is tougher than he is. I know because I trained him today. I watched him look at the laminated rules the same way I did. I watched him smile like there was still room for it to be a joke. I wanted to tell him to run. Instead, I showed him the register. The cameras. The coffee. The hallway gate. The receipt printer. The rules. When I handed him the night watch, I noticed the initials scratched into the back had changed. They used to say D, M, L. Now they say C, M, V. I did not show him. At 8:59 tonight, I stood behind the counter and watched the printer. Daniel was beside me. Tess stood near the door, arms folded, face pale. The wall clock is back up now. I don't know who hung it there. None of us did. The red second hand swept toward 12. Daniel whispered, "This is messed up." I said, "Just read what prints." The clock clicked to 9. The receipt printer chattered. A white slip curled out. Daniel reached for it. I grabbed his wrist. Because the handwriting was mine. Not printed text. Not Earl's. Mine. Daniel looked at me. "What?" I tore the slip off myself. It said, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Let Daniel go home. Caleb can cover one more night. I folded it once. Then again. Then I put it in my pocket. Tess stared at me. "What did it say?" I looked at Daniel. He was waiting, nervous, trying to pretend he wasn't. Outside, camera 3 showed my truck at pump 4. Through the front window, the space was empty. The diner bell rang once. Daniel flinched. I told him it was just a glitch. And for the first time since I took this job, the station lights all went out at once. When they came back on, Daniel was gone. The front door was still locked. Tess was still by the entrance. The receipt printer was empty. On camera 7, cabin 4 had its light on. Someone sat on the bed with their back to us. Young shoulders. Short hair. Daniel's hoodie. Tess covered her mouth. I looked at the wall clock. 9:01. The night had barely started. A new rule printed. This one was not in my handwriting. It said, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. If Caleb asks to be relieved, say you do not know him. Tess read it. Then she looked at me like she was trying to remember my face. I haven't asked yet. I'm afraid she'll follow the rule. The diner bell just rang again. There is coffee on the counter. And my reflection in the front window is still standing there, even when I walk away.